Please welcome the co-founders of Headspace, Puddicombe and Rich Pierson. Welcome to SC. Have you guys been here before?
I haven't. Rich has been here for a few times, yeah.
Well, welcome and welcome back. As I mentioned today, our class is more about mindset. So Headspace is the perfect app and tool that this class is yearning for. And again, we have a sister class with Dr. Fox's Science of High Performance class that it just fits in perfectly. So a lot of the students are in both classes.
Okay.
So tonight I want to sort of do two things. A background of your life stories, get into Headspace, how it happened, that story, and then if you feel inclined, maybe a mindfulness or a meditation exercise, sort of three parts, and then we'll open up to questions.
Sure.
And then we'll all do a little dance. No, and then we'll come back with a question. So because this is about mindfulness and meditation, we want to minimize the distractions, and so close your laptops. If you don't need them to take notes, if you're not taking notes for the class, close your laptops. Calm, confident, focused, here, present. It's a great moment to be here, right?
This is just for us, right?
This is for
this
you.
little prep talk. Yeah. It's not for these guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I want you here too as well.
Yeah, we'll be here.
Well, let's start with, for those who aren't familiar with mindfulness and meditation, what is it and why should we believe in it?
Sure. So the first thing I'd say actually is not a matter of belief. So traditionally meditation and mindfulness were taught in such a way that, there's no belief required actually. That here's a technique, go away, try it. If it makes a difference, then you have some confidence. And you have confidence born from experience, not from the words that somebody else kind of speaks. So I would kind of emphasize that. Kind of don't take my word for it, or Rich's. Go away, try the techniques for yourself and kind of see if it makes a difference. I think it's worth just differentiating mindfulness and meditation. They get used interchangeably a lot, especially in the media. They're really kind of different things. So mindfulness is the ability to be present. So undistracted and with an open mind. So if you think about the times in your life when you might experience that, maybe there was a time, I don't know, you were watching a sunset, maybe you were listening to some music, maybe you were with a friend, but that time where all the thoughts and distractions just kind of melted away and you felt fully kind of present in the moment. The challenge for most of us is that those moments are quite infrequent and they tend to just arise, and when they do arise, we love them, they wish they'd last longer, but they kind of don't stay around for too long. So we need an environment in which we can learn the skill of mindfulness, and that's all meditation is. So you're becoming familiar with what it means to be mindful, undistracted, with an open mind. So meditation, we take ourselves away for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, for some people an hour, and we learn the skill of mindfulness, and it's then about applying that back into everyday life.
So how many of you regularly feel stressed? How many of you have anxiety because you have anxiety? Over your anxiety. All right, you're in the right place.
Yeah.
So what are the before we're going to dive into your backgrounds, what are the benefits of practicing mindfulness in terms of the real tangible benefits for your life? Proven.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it is worth separating out kind of anecdotal and scientifically kind of proven. There's well over 5,000 published papers now, probably about 3,000 or so that are peer-reviewed and respected sort of medical journals. And it's broad, so everything from insomnia, so sleeping better, to reducing blood pressure, to reducing anxiety, to decreasing the incidence of depression, or in particular the relapse of depression, reducing stress. I don't know, I mean, it's so broad. The scope of it, it's become such a kind of hot sort of topic in neuroscience. That we've seen studies around, my personal favorites are outside of the health realm, they're more in compassion. So we're working with the National Health Service in the UK, looking at sort of compassion fatigue. So doctors and nurses who are working in really stressful environments who often burn out very quickly, and actually kind of looking to see how mindfulness can be used as an intervention so that people can continue being compassionate and caring in their work, but not burning out in the process.
So it's also, in addition to the science, there's anecdotal evidence about how it improves your relationships and your health. And I mean, there's not just anecdotal, but
there's tons, and I think we can dig deeper into it later on. But if you are interested, if you just go to the Headspace website, we've got a whole sort of part of the website which is dedicated to the science, and you can dig in not only to where it's relevant to you, but also you can go into the paper and have a look kind of where it came from. So,
okay.
yeah.
Well, let's sort of just go back a little bit in terms of your lives, maybe a little bit more than a little bit. Rich, where did you grow up? Where were you born? Size of family?
Wow. So I was born in a place called Kent, which is just south of London, in one of the home counties. I was brought up I've got one sister, so quite a small family. I was brought up in the middle of the country with no houses around me for about 10 miles. And then I went to boarding school when I was 13. So I was surrounded by a few more people then. But up until that point, it had been me and the sheep and the cows.
And what did your parents do for work?
They're both entrepreneurs, actually. My mum has had the same ladies' boutique for like 27 years, and my dad has had the same business that he's had since he was 17 years. It's coming up for almost 50 years he's had the same business. So I was brought up with two long-term same business. It's kind of incredible that they're still going today.
That is incredible. That's a long run. Did you have any early experiences with entrepreneurship, or would you wait till you were sort of out of school?
I would say that
Hustle?
I try. I think Andy was the same as well. I think I tried a lot of things. Before Headspace, I had about 8 or 9 different businesses. When I met Andy, I had about 8 or 9 different business ideas that I was trying to. I always had something cooking that was trying to get off the ground, and everyone kind of saying what a stupid idea it was for a long time. Ever since I can remember, really, since I was 13, 14, whether it was selling tickets for nightclubs or trying to put on parties or anything. Yeah.
You always see that sort of common thread in a lot of people, that just people hustle early or understand money early. And once you sort of get that taste for it, and if your family encourages it, or just family situation necessitates it, you're sort of set in that mindset. What about you? Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up in the southwest of England, so sort of Bristol, Bath area. Sort of Bristol.
So how far from like Bournemouth and Poole?
A little bit further north, a little bit further west.
All right.
But it's kind of farming territory. It's the equivalent, I guess, of the Midwest out here or something. Yeah, so I grew up there with a mum she's like a hippie at heart. And so it's a very conventional, traditional family. I had a slightly older sister. But my mum was, she kind of had this streak of, she's very progressive. She was working in stress management training. So that was like sort of 35 years ago. So it's maybe no coincidence I ended up taking the route that I did in the end.
As Steve Jobs said at Stanford, you can't align the dots looking forward, but you can look at them looking back, and yours is so interesting to look back on.
It's amazing.
I want to talk about your unique experience before this, and then we'll circle around to how you guys met and sort of how you came together. So 1992, I think in your life you experienced some hardship. Can you tell us what happened in your life?
Sure, yeah. I was probably like most of you. I was as a student, and we'd gone out drinking one night, and a drunk driver crashed into a group of us, killed a couple of friends, and injured. Probably put about 12 in intensive care. So like really heavy kind of situation, and I think everybody went away from that night, kind of dealing with it in different ways, and some people drank a lot, and other people kind of went and had therapy, and it wasn't really the kind of, I say they went and had therapy, it wasn't really a time or a place in the UK where therapy was even a thing, So therapy at that stage was just finding someone that you could kind of talk to. My way of coping with it was to go overseas as quickly as possible. I just traveled, and I came over here actually to America. I worked for a little bit. I went and did a ski season in France, working in a bar. Went to Ibiza for a summer season and did some building work. And as much as I kind of tried to travel around the world, trying to sort of get away from those really difficult feelings inside of myself, my mind just sort of followed me wherever I went. Not surprisingly. So I found myself in a situation, and the family situation, so just after that accident had happened, my stepsister was run over and killed as well, like 3 months later. So the family situation was quite intense as well. So I didn't really kind of feel like I had a sort of a home there. And so I found myself in a situation thinking, okay, well, I'm going to study, because that's what everybody does, and that's what all my friends had done. I was 3 years behind, but I could see they were having quite good fun at university, and I thought, yeah, that would be good. So I went to university. And just to be clear, I'm not recommending that you do what I did, because I'm about to tell you how I left university halfway through. But I went to study sports science, and I was about a year and a half in. And I had an overwhelming feeling that although it was very satisfying, it was very interesting, it wasn't particularly kind of fulfilling. It wasn't like in a deep sense, you know. It wasn't answering the questions that I was interested in life, and it wasn't giving me a sense of peace of mind or a real kind of purpose and direction in life. So I quit university, and I went and became a Buddhist monk in the Himalayas instead. Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many questions on this. So where'd you go to Nepal?
I started off in northern India. So most of, again, apologies to those of you who know this stuff, but most of the good Tibetan monasteries are actually in northern India or Nepal, just because of the situation in Tibet. So a lot of the teachers kind of came over to India in the 50s, 60s. So I started off there. I actually ended up doing 5 years in the Burmese tradition, and then 5 years in the Tibetan tradition. So I went to Burma, and then went back to India, where I ordained in the Tibetan tradition, and then did 5 years in the Tibetan.
I was just in Myanmar recently.
Oh, okay.
And visited a couple monasteries.
Yeah.
What city were you in? Were you in Yangon?
I was just outside Yangon, about three hours outside Yangon. Yeah.
So share with the class what that lifestyle entails and requires.
So look, it's an acquired taste, and you kind of have to go there to kind of really feel it. I don't think anything I can say will really kind of give you that feeling. When you're in retreat, so I'll just give you kind of a little taste of the Burmese, a little taste of the Tibetan, and you can. In the Burmese monastery, it's quite strict. You know, there's not a lot of joking around, which I found quite difficult because I like joking around, and it's silent. So any joking around would have had to have been sort of through charades anyway. And so I was there for a long time, and so it's 9 hours of sitting practice a day, 9 hours of walking practice a day. So you're in a shrine room, kind of like a big room, and you have a seat at the end of the room with it's like a little mosquito net. You pull every time you sit down on the hour, you pull the string, and the mosquito net kind of drops down, and then the gong goes at the end of the hour, and you pull it back up, and then you do an hour of walking meditation just backwards and forwards. So you do 9 hours of each every day. You have breakfast at 5 and lunch at 11, and then you don't eat after midday as a monk.
Where do your meals come from?
The local community provide them, so they bring in food, and they support the community, and in return the monastery support the local community with with teachings. And then you go to bed. As a monk or a nun, and it is nuns as well in these monasteries. You're separated, but you sleep pretty much on the floor, and you have about 3-4 hours night, sort of 3-4 hours sleep a night. And then the Tibetan one's a little different. So the Tibetan ones are a lot more. This is my experience. A lot more fun. Yeah, I mean it was a riot in there, you know. It was you do four blocks of meditation a day. They're 3 or 4 hours each, so it's slightly kind of different. But it's not all in silence, so you get to kind of chat a little bit between the sessions. And there's just, I don't know, for me there was a much greater emphasis on compassion, on kind of playfulness. I know that sounds kind of, with that schedule, it doesn't sound very playful. But when you're looking at meditation and trying to bring a spirit of playfulness and curiosity and interest into it, that's really important to have an environment that supports that.
And what did you have to give up in terms of being there? I mean, I'm not making a joke of this.
Sure. No,
because when you study neuroscience,
Yeah.
you study biology, first you have to recognize that humans are an animal,
Yeah.
and it's very difficult to turn off, evolutionary systems. So
Yeah.
how do you do that?
You see, I mean, you give up worldly life, that's how it's kind of translated. So you give away everything you have. So you have to give away all your worldly possessions before you go in there. My mum was a bit sneaky. She took all my photos and things like that and packed them away in the attic. So when I went back home to give everything away, there was things missing, which have since reappeared. But you gave everything, you know, you give money away, and then obviously you become celibate as a monk. So you give up relationships in that sense.
For how long?
Which as a 22-year-old guy was interesting, you know. Let's put it like that. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you sort of make light of it, but you were doing this for 10 years.
Yeah, but I think I not to give too much information, but I did have a break between being a Burmese monk and a Tibetan monk, but it was brief. So it's 5 years, not 10 years. But I think it's really true. It's an interesting kind of thing. I think most of us kind of think that every thought that arises in our mind, we have to go with the thought. Or any feeling that arises in the body, we have to go with the feeling. And because of that, we're kind of almost a slave to the mind, you know. So we feel like the mind has control over us, or our body has control over us. And what you find by sitting and watching the mind and watching the thoughts is that actually it's possible to get to a point where these feelings and thoughts arise, and you're able to see them, witness them clearly, and let them go. And as a result of that, the mind, there's freedom, because you no longer feel like a slave to the mind. So although it sounds like quite a challenging kind of thing, it's actually an incredibly liberating thing, because over time there's a sense of kind of freedom that comes with that. But you can only find that by sitting down with it. There's no other way. You can't do it from reading a book.
Yeah, no, and that long of a stretch, it sort of explains how you become an expert in this, and it lines up. But so how do you wrap up that part of your life when you, I guess you discontinue being a monk?
Yeah.
What do you do next? And tell us what your next degree is in.
So my next degree was in circus arts. So let me just give some context around this, because I appreciate it sounds a fairly sort of diverse resume. But so I competed in gymnastics until the age of 22, when I went away to become a monk. So for 10 years, I then kind of did no exercise. So at the end of my time as a monk, I was really keen to get back into my body and to do something physical. The monastery had sent me to Moscow in Russia, where I was teaching meditation. I met a guy who was doing a degree at Moscow State Circus, and he said, well, look, you know, if you're not a monk anymore, maybe you want to come along. And I started going along, and it was really fun. And they were like, you can do a degree in this back in London, you know. And at the time, I'd given everything, as I say, away as a monk, and I had no idea how I was going to do what, you know, is now this, you know. And so I was trying to think, okay, how am I going to go back to England? How am I going to afford it? I have no money. And I was an old student. I was like 32 at the time, I think. And so in the UK, if you're an older student, the government are really supportive. So they not only give you money for education, they give you money for your accommodation, like the whole thing. So I moved back to London, and I did a degree in circus arts. And whilst I was doing that, I wrote up the content which we now use in Headspace.
And Rich, tell us about your early career and sort of where that took you. You started, I don't know if you started in advertising, but I know you spent a considerable time in advertising.
Yeah, no, my whole, it's advertising's fault that this has happened. I started on a graduate training scheme straight out of university and joined McCann Erickson, and I was there for about a year and a half. And then I got headhunted by an agency called BBH. I was basically there for the whole balance of my career, and I got promoted pretty young, with not a lot of help and not a lot of guidance or kind of coaching. I just kept getting dropped into bigger and bigger roles, and I think that was part of that was, I don't think Headspace could have happened if that hadn't happened. Not just because of the fact I burnt out, but I think it was a kind of sink or swim culture, and I kept kind of prove myself. But I think because I didn't have any experience or training with it, I had no idea how to kind of manage my energy or how to actually kind of approach it in a professional way. And so I found myself at 26? Yeah, 26. And just kind of had a bit of a breakdown. And so I kind of left. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was getting acupuncture at the time for my stress. And my acupuncturist said, have you ever thought about being an acupuncturist? And I was like, I've never thought about being an acupuncturist. And he said, well, I've got a course starting in 2 weeks. Do you want to do it? So I said, yeah, sure. So I did it. So I was doing that, and I was doing that 3 days a week, and I was freelancing. And I never thought I was going to be an actor. Like, deep down, I never thought I was going to be an actor. But it was a chance for me. Like, hindsight's no sight. You know, you're thinking about the dots. But it gave me the space to explore all the business ideas that I had and didn't have time to kind of do. So I was kind of doing that in my spare time. And then I was freelancing. And that's when I met Andy, because I was freelancing for one of Andy's clients. He had a clinic in London. And so one of his clients said, have you, I've been getting meditation lessons off this monk. And I was like, really? He was like, yeah, he's been teaching me meditation. He said, actually, he needs some help, like marketing his clinic. Would you go and meet him? And so I was kind of intrigued. And yeah, and then so we met. And yeah, that was the start of it. That's kind of how it all. It was very organic. It was very natural. And we did a kind of skill swap to start with. I came up with some ideas for the clinic, and he taught me meditation. And at the time, I think it's also worth saying that, you know, my breakdown was kind of pretty intense, and I couldn't. It was really difficult for me to be in public. My anxiety levels were really. I found it really difficult to just be in the world, and it just helped. Like, from the very first session, it wasn't like I was like, oh my God, I'm cured of my anxiety. But I thought there's something in this. Like, there was like a glimmer that I thought, wow, there's something really interesting. And I'd never met anyone like Andy. Like, there was kind of, so it was an unusual kind of meeting. And we started off where Andy was my meditation teacher, then he became my friend, and then we became business partners. So it's an unusual kind of relationship that we have, which I think is why Headspace is what it is today. You know?
What was the first, like, poignant question he asked you?
I remember, he said, how much of your life do you think you spent in the present moment?
Say that again so they can hear that.
How much of your life do you think you spent in the present moment? No one, does that?
Yeah, I don't remember,
Yeah,
but
I
yeah. I think it's a good question, like, just to ask yourselves from time to time, you know, like how much time really do you spend in the present moment? I don't know if anyone saw, I don't want to interrupt your story, I don't know if anyone saw that there was a study, it's probably like 5-6 years ago now from Harvard, where I think they discovered that almost 50% of our life is spent in mind wandering, you know, so 47% of our life typically is spent mind wandering, so distracted. And on the one hand, like, that's kind of frightening enough to think that we don't live for that long anyway, and to miss half of our life because we're lost in thought is kind of tragic. But more than that, the conclusion of the study found that people who simply allow their mind to wander are that much more likely to be unhappy. So, and there was a direct correlation between mind wandering and unhappiness. So I think there's something interesting there to explore for all of us.
If you throw in sleep, it's more than 50% too.
Sure.
Those are your waking hours.
Yeah.
I'm not liking that percentage at all.
Yeah.
Well, Rich, share with us sort of the, you know, you said the relationship evolved. Tell us about how the relationship, before Headspace, what, as you started spending more time with Andy and maybe adopting some of these practices, how did it impact your life?
Yeah, well, I think, no one had ever asked me a question. In the ad world, not many people say, how much of your time have you spent in the present moment? It wasn't the kind of conversations I was having, and it did kind of, something kind of clicked in me, it kind of floored me, that question. And I think it started, for me, a process of kind of inquiry and curiosity that kind of hasn't really stopped, I would say. So that was the first thing. And then I think the biggest thing that I noticed early on was the separation between that my emotions and my thoughts weren't necessarily real. And that for me was a huge moment of understanding that my anxiety is something that kind of changes and it isn't fixed. When Andy kind of explained that to me, and like, your thoughts, they kind of change and they're constantly kind of moving, and it's only when we hold on to like these, for me, they were earth-shattering kind of points of view that changed my whole perspective on life. And I think as a result, it changed my relationship with myself, and then more importantly, it changed my relationship with every single person around me. I think that, and my relationship to the world and the way that I was living and the way that I was thinking, and it made me question everything, and still kind of makes me question everything. But I think that was the thing that got me hooked into it and became quite addictive. And I've never missed a session since that first.
Pretty committed.
That first day.
When you say haven't missed a session, what do you mean by that?
I've never ever not meditated every single day since I got taught by Andy.
Just put it 9 years ago, something like that.
Yeah. It's a pretty powerful testimonial to the power of the practice and your influence. It's, you know, and the purpose of this class and Glenn's class is, you know, there are some things that they're going to have to learn and touch the stove and burn their hands, you know, and have the experience that you have of just having a life. But if you could cut out some of that anxiety, the decades of anxiety that their parents had, that I've had, and sort of learn this earlier, you can have a better life.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy, right, to kind of look back and to think like that. And you know, we were chatting the other day. I was lucky, so I got introduced to meditation by my mum when I was about 11. You know, but it never really became like a serious kind of practice. But when I look back now, we're doing a lot of work with Headspace for kids in schools and with young and learning those. You know, you look back at the skills that you learn at school, and sure, there's some useful ones there, but like, really, like, I mean, happiness should. Like a happy life should probably be really high priority in our society, you know. And I'm not suggesting that quadratic equations are less important, but they are. I think if we can, doesn't matter. Like really, the earlier you can learn it, the better. And even if you didn't learn it as a young child, like to learn it now. I don't know how old you guys are, but I guess it's a similar age to when I went off to become a monk, and I just cannot. You know, whether you use Headspace or use something else or you find your own kind of way, I cannot recommend enough like the benefits of pausing on a daily basis, just to let go of all the inner chatter in the mind and to find a place of sort of calm and clarity.
And did you find that by sort of calming your mind and having a mindfulness or meditation practice, that that your self-talk improved, that your anxiety improved, that even your self-image and self-esteem improved?
It's difficult. It's difficult because you kind of see yourself how you are now, and it's difficult sometimes to look back on it. But I would say that it's not like anxiety disappears. Like I think that's the big myth, that you think, oh, I'm gonna master these emotions and I'm never gonna have them again. And my experience has been the complete opposite of that, which is that you just become more aware of them, and that you go into them quicker, as in you notice when you go into them sooner, and you can come out of them quicker. So it's not that it's not that you stop experiencing them, but you don't get stuck in them. And I used to have months where I would be in a like an anxiety funk where it never got any better. It was just a constant hamster wheel of feeling like that, no matter what happened. And there'd be brief distractions, but on the whole, I never felt like it was just mastering me. And so now I kind of feel I just have a bit more, I have different tools to be able to deal with those things when they come up. So that, and it's subtle, but for me that's been the big thing. I never feel like I've mastered them.
Well, the one thing about emotions is that they will change.
Yeah.
And it's just whether you observe them and are aware of them, as opposed to just focus and you know, almost any emotion begets more of that same emotion, whether it's worry or self-doubt or any of those things. And so it is being able to sort of pull back, I think.
Yeah.
I'm a student in this. I'm not by no means an expert, so I'm trying to figure it out myself. Continue with Rich. So what's the first business? You guys built an events business. Talk about that first.
Well, the first idea was, you know, Andy had always had a vision to make this kind of bigger than it was. And the very first meeting that we had, which was in a sushi bar in London, was I thought that he should put this on an app. And he didn't think that it would work on an app.
True story.
But to be fair, you had a very good reason. Like, we both agreed that it was actually probably not the right route to take.
I think one apps had come out probably about 6 months before then. I had no idea what they were. I didn't really know what a mobile phone was. and I was a little bit behind the curve with that stuff. But also this tradition had been passed down from kind of person to person and always in person. So it was kind of hard to imagine how you could put something on a device and just kind of put it out there and think that it would work. And Rich kind of had the foresight, but also the patience to stick with me when I said, no, that's not going to work.
Well, it's the purist
Yeah.
and the marketer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
It's a nice blend of that. And you know, it's ironic, we can talk about this now or later, that you know, the very thing that the app is helping you with, which is to pull back and not be distracted by the one thing that distracts you more than anything, is the one thing that you're using.
Yeah.
So there's sort of an irony in that. But tell us why. Well, we're talking about your events business, but tell us why that has to be the way. You know, why the irony or the paradox of having a device that you're supposed to be pulling away from is the one thing that's instructing you.
But it's the thing that you might as well go to where people are, and that's where they're spending the time. And if I'm not sure that the rules have been written on how we should use technology yet. I don't think any of us really understand how we can use it in a way that kind of feels good. So I still think we're working it out. We're just at the start of the pendulum. We haven't had these powerful computers in our pockets for long enough to really understand how to use them in a smart way. And so I think there's a massive opportunity for smart people like yourselves to think about applications, services that live on these devices that can genuinely help people live in a more thoughtful way. And I just think we're right at the tip of what that can be. Headspace is one version of that, but I think it would be great if we were trying to make things that had real impact on people's lives versus trying to get people addicted to engagement, because I'm not sure that that's ever going to... The problem is we're so addicted to the way that these products have been built that that's why we're so distracted. You know, I was with someone yesterday up in San Fran saying her kids, like, they cannot watch a feature-length film. They cannot watch anything over an hour long. Like, 7 minutes in and they're off. It's like they're bored, they're out. It's kind of that rewiring, I think, is pretty scary, personally.
You're glad that you didn't have that rewired while you were being a monk. You know, you didn't have that same type of... I mean, their brains are different than our brains, and I'm sure the next generation's brains will be different too. So it's a struggle. But I guess you hit on the thing of the events business that this solved, or this proposes to solve, which is scale. You can't scale an events business very easily without sort of adding more people and, you know, infrastructure. So did you sort of come up with the tech platform, and, you know, the concept meets the tech platform? What was your shorthand pitch for Headspace? Was there something out there already that you thought this is like that?
No, there really wasn't. The event business, like, again, hindsight is no sight, but it was the best thing that could have happened to Headspace, and it would never be what it is today if we hadn't done the events, because we basically had a live R&D lab with 200 to 400 people every single week that we could speak to face to face. We could see their emotion. We could see what worked. And we had that every week, and it was so invaluable. And we used to collect hundreds of these feedback cards, and we'd pour through them over the week. And that gave us all of the insight about what worked, what didn't. It started off as an 8-hour event. It went down to 6 hours, 4 hours, 3 hours, and all the way down to an hour. Yeah. So it was getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So that was a massive part of the pre-run. And the truth was that the business was so bad that we'd run out of money, and it was literally like the last roll of the dice. Like, I'd like to tell you that I think it just got to a point where we were getting so many requests from around the world for people saying, we can't come to your event, we'd love to get some content, and we were selling these like tracks kind of over the web. And then we thought, well, we came to New York, we did an event, and someone said, have you ever thought about doing this as a subscription? We were like, no. And so we thought, let's do that. And I'd love to tell you it was more planned than that, but that was literally the genesis. And we had $50,000 left, and we chucked it all on the subscription. And the first January, we launched it with a partnership with The Guardian, and it's basically been going up ever since.
And it's not coincidence. I mean, anybody who's developing an app or starting a business, what we force you to do, or anyone will force you to do, is talk to customers and do customer discovery. So if you take feasibility here, that's what you're going to have to do. Everyone wants to build an app to solve a problem, but they haven't talked to the customer. They did that before they launched their app. I mean, they had sort of like face-to-face contact with comments for however long you ran the events business, and there's nothing more invaluable than that.
I would, yeah, and you know, we were talking about it in a meeting with our head of product today. You know, after, you know, leaving the monastery, there was really kind of, if you think, sort of almost 3 years in the clinic, doing one-to-one, working. They were guinea pigs. I had no idea what would work outside of the monastery, delivered in a different way, you know, and doing one-to-one, and then meeting Rich, and then we had a couple of years of events. So we really kind of had almost 5 years of understanding directly from the customer, consumer, kind of what worked and what didn't.
And what was version 1.0? You know, you said you took $50,000 from friends and family and your money.
Yeah.
And when did you launch, and sort of what was the initial product?
Well, the first product was, how do we replicate what happens in the clinic on an app? And it was a linear journey. So it was the idea was, at that point, the only time that you could get meditations was if you sent off for a CD and you got it sent to you, and you kind of listened on repeat to the same track over and over again. Or you went to a Buddhist center, or you went to a community center and went and learnt it live. So it was actually, at that time, to do every single day a separate session. So it was 365 days, and Andy was in the black box recording it.
Yeah, so we were in Soho in London, and they locked me in a box for a year, and a bit like being back in the monastery. And yeah, you know, I don't know how long it took. Maybe it was like 4 months or something like that, 5 months, and I just recorded kind of every single day over, you know, a year's worth of meditation. And I think we still have it, and we may still use it. I think that there was something about that journey. On the one hand, it was very limiting, because once people, as I say, you know, once you're on it, you either continued or you kind of got off en route. But then people would kind of say, well, this is great, I love it, but you know, I don't want to wait until month 6 to learn about how to apply mindfulness to relationships. I'm in the middle of a breakup right now. And so it's kind of like, okay, so we're going to have to kind of look at how we break this year down into a more kind of modular sort of program, so that people could access what they want when they want.
I said to Andy, I said, so what have you, how have you ended it? Like, because obviously you had to listen to all the content. I didn't listen to he said, well, I've just kind of said that, you know, when it gets to the end, like, thank you for using Headspace and good luck. And
so
I said, that's the worst subscription business ever.
Yeah. It was genuine. You know, obviously I didn't have a lot of business experience. And so I really was. It was like, you know, thanks so much for being with me for the last 365 days. I hope you found it useful, and enjoy the rest of your journey, whatever you do next. And we very quickly realised that wasn't a recipe for success or retention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you've graduated to level 2 of 50 more levels.
Yeah.
And so you initially grew your user base. You said you had a big push in the British newspaper. Tell us how you used that sort of as a marketing edge.
Yeah, we had like 2 big partnerships early on that made a big difference. So we partnered with Virgin Atlantic when there was only like 3 of us, and we got the content on every single Virgin Atlantic plane. And then we approached The Guardian, and we did a content swap where we created some bespoke content for all of their readers in January, which is their kind of New Year, New You kind of session. So 6th of January 2012, we convinced them to put 1 million booklets on the front of, so it's printed, and it was 10 easy steps to meditate, and it had an offer in it. And that was really, that's what kind of launched. Without those 2 partnerships, Headspace would just never have happened, and they didn't cost us anything either. In fact, Virgin paid us. But the Guardian one was completely just an exchange of content.
So always finding sort of partners that you can, you know, get you to a first customer. They weren't your customer, but they lead to customers, and sort of be a lead blocker for you in your market. In 2013, you moved from the UK or from London to here, and you know, most companies that are tech-based companies would go to the Bay Area. Why did you decide LA was the right place for Headspace?
So I think there were 2. Well, let's start with the easy one. Was that we love surfing, and we really wanted to surf and to wake up in a sunny climate where we could surf before work each day. That's the truth. So now the professional answer. LA seem to be having and this is genuine. Like LA was having a moment, and is having a moment. I think for us it was really exciting. We would never have fit in Silicon Valley. I think this was much more aligned with not only our personal kind of lifestyle preferences, but also kind of where we wanted to take the product. LA is a really unique coming together of entertainment and creative and technology. And we see this as, like, when we started out trying to convince people to try meditation, I mean, we would get laughed out of a room, you know. 10 years ago, people just weren't kind of open to that at all. And it was in creating an entertaining and sort of engaging invitation to it that we found a route in. And so for us, this has always been about kind of entertaining content. And LA is the home of entertaining content. And it just so happens that technology now has found a home here as well, which allows the delivery of that content.
Yeah, I mean, if you're telling stories, you want to be here. And we sort of got access to media, entertainment, tech.
Yeah.
And where do you guys live on the, like, South Bay, Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, where I live, or where do you guys sort of surf?
I'm in Venice.
Yeah.
I'm in Santa Monica.
All right.
Yeah.
And you talked about your first capital, which was $50,000. How much have you raised so far? From whom? And how much have you spent?
So we've raised about 34 million. We waited. If you think we launched in 2010 and we didn't do our Series A until September 2015, so we bootstrapped it for a long, long time, and we were profitable when we did that round. So we were really lucky, and that's kind of been an important. I think it was a really important decision for a socially mission-driven company to make sure that we had all the controls, all the power in making the decisions that we wanted to make in order to get this project to where we've always dreamed it could get to. We chose the Cherning Group as the lead investor, which is Peter Cherning's kind of fund, and we met over 60 different investment vehicles, let's say, and so we got to. It was a learning curve. We probably met too many people, is the truth, but we picked TCG because we really love Peter and the team, and I think their point of view around digital media and content, I think is really interesting for what we're doing. And they were local, and so we spent a lot more time with those guys and got to know them personally. And then there was a bunch of people. So Jeff Weiner, who, LinkedIn, Jim Breyer, who was first money in at Facebook back in the day, like Ryan Seacrest, Jessica Rao, a bunch of influencers. Advance It Capital, which is Shari Redstone's fund. I mean, there's a whole. It was a laundry list of interesting and smart people. Yeah.
And how much have you spent of that 34 million that you've raised?
Virtually nothing.
Wait, you said nothing.
Yeah, pretty much. We have got all the money that we have in the Series A.
So you've got dry powder to grow, obviously.
Yeah. And so when we did, to put that into context, we had 17 people when we did the deal in September 2015. We have over 175 now, and we've done a big office move. So we funded the business in a lot in that time, but the business is healthy on its own.
You're funding it organically, right, through operations.
Yeah.
So subscriptions are, unlike many startups and newer apps. You've got a revenue stream, there's money coming in, it pays for your employees, and the growth part is probably where you'll tap into this. So give us a thumbnail sketch of where it stands now, to the extent you want to share, the number of subscribers and sort of growth. You mentioned how many people are working with the company now? How many?
Over 170 now.
All here, pretty much all here?
And we've got 3, we've just started an engineering hub in San Francisco, which we've got about 3, we've only just started that, and then we've got an office in London. It's got about 12 people.
Of course you have an office in London.
The original office still in London.
And so how many subscribers do you have now? And then give us, for those of them who are not on Headspace or subscribers, give us sort of the plans, the pricing plans and how it works, and just an overview of the business model for the company.
Yeah, sure. So we don't release subscriber numbers, but I can tell you that we're just about to cross 14 million downloads. And to put that into some context, you know, 85% of that is still driven organically through kind of word of mouth and PR. So we don't do a huge amount of paid advertising. We do a bit, but mainly that is driven through the natural viral nature of the product. It's a subscription split between monthly, yearly, 2 yearly, and lifetime. Most of our subscribers are in the yearly bucket, followed by monthly. Yeah.
So I imagine you have a dashboard on your computer that tells you a variety of things on this business in terms of, you know, why don't you share what are the things that you really tune into, whether it's customer acquisition costs, which sounds fairly low because you're not doing marketing, it's word of mouth, which is the best thing when you have a viral loop, meaning, you know, Lauren sends me a membership or a code to sign up. I like it so much that, which is true, she did, thank you very much. That's not, and then I tell somebody and 3 other people sign up. That's the dream, that's called the viral loop. What other things do you look at? Customer acquisition costs, retention, return rate, frequency, long-term value of the customer. What are you uniquely keyed into?
Yeah, so LTV is a long-term, you know, lifetime value is an important measure for how you spend in terms of customer acquisition. So that's something that we track. Churn is obviously something that we track. It's really important.
Explain what that is.
Yeah, so, you know, how many of your subscribers are churning when their monthly renewal comes up, when their yearly renewal comes up, their 2-year. Obviously, the lifetime never churns. So that's a really important metric for a subscription business. We also kind of obsess mainly about engagement and different buckets of engagement. So we think about that as weekly kind of active meditators. That's kind of, we're not a kind of daily kind of engagement. We're not like a Facebook or a Snapchat. That's not really the kind of engagement game that we're in. But it's always about how do we nudge people from the various buckets that we have into higher levels of engagement. So we kind of obsess about the cohorts and how we're pushing them through and how we do that with different types of content. You know, we've been working a long time on a new version of the update of the product, which I think will, you know, really dramatically improve the Headspace experience quite a lot.
So what's your ideal, let's say ideal customer, the one that, you know, your strike zone of how often they engage, how, you know, is there one? I mean, you've got different buckets, but are there?
Do you want to take that from a?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, when we started, our ideal kind of Headspace user was meditating every single day for at least 10 minutes a day. And then reality kind of struck, and it was like, okay, that's not how most people are going to use it. So it's really interesting to look. We've got 3 very distinct kind of buckets of users, and they're all equally kind of interesting and kind of valuable, you know, to the community. So the first part are kind of what we call aspirin users. So these are people who have Headspace on their phone. They don't use it every day. They wait until they get stressed, or they wait until their exams kind of happen, or I don't know, till a relationship breaks up, or something kind of just the things that are going on all the time, and then they use Headspace to feel better. As soon as they feel better, they put it back down again. So it's kind of like the aspirin. Then there's kind of the vitamin type users, who is a bit more preventative. Those guys are using it most days, at least 5 days a week. It's quite a big cohort, but they're using it because they don't want to get to a point where they feel stressed and they feel unwell. And then there's kind of big life events. So people who, they have it on their phone, they don't use it every day until a certain something happens in their life. Maybe they got unwell, maybe someone in their family gets unwell, maybe somebody dies, maybe they're getting married. Like there are these really big life events. And then we'll see kind of sustained usage for kind of 3 to 6 months, and then they might drop off again. And they won't come back until another big thing kind of happens in their life. So there's 3 kind of distinct kind of camps.
And as a guru of this,
I'm not a guru, just to be clear.
A skilled expert, I just thought it was interesting. He grouped illness, death, and marriage in the same group.
Yeah, my wife would feel so good about that. No, I think that, you know, and as someone who, your dad?
No.
You have kids? Okay. So I know someone joked earlier. I think, look, as anyone who has gone through yeah, any of those things, like those big things, they don't have to be bad. Big things in life can be good. You know, maybe you move country, maybe you move job. Like, so they can be really positive things as well, but they have a big impact on our life, and they really kind of shake very often our sense of security. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no, I'm being glib, but
oh, no.
all of those things create a tremendous amount of
Just
stress.
in case my wife sees it at some stage.
Yeah, you can look at it first. We're going to open it up to questions for them in a minute. If you want to, give an example of meditation, you're welcome to. I don't want to force you into anything.
Well, it's certainly not forcing me into anything. It's more I don't want to force anything on you guys. You know, if you guys would like to have a go, I'd be okay. So for this bit, I know some of you have been taking notes. It's better if you don't take notes during the meditation. It might interfere a little bit. If you've got, you probably already got your phones switched off or on silent. If you haven't, if you can just make sure that they are now. And I'm going to recommend as well that you you don't have to sit in any special way, but I would recommend that your arms and your legs are uncrossed. You'll just find it kind of more comfortable to relax.
You want the lights down, or you?
How would you like the lights down a bit more? Okay, let's take if we can take the lights down a little bit.
I don't know if I'll.
Oh wow, that's really dark. Is it? Everyone okay with that? Yeah, it's quite nice actually. Okay, and then you don't have to look at me either. All right. So to begin with, okay, just take a moment. If you've got anything on your lap, if you're holding bits of paper or if you're holding drinks, I suggest you put them on the floor. I've seen lots of people spill their drinks as they fall asleep in the middle of meditation. So make sure that's all on the floor. So just take a moment just to make sure you're sitting comfortably, your feet ideally flat on the floor. Don't worry too much if they're not. And the hands, the arms, you can just rest them on your legs or in your lap, whatever feels comfortable for you. And I'd like you to begin by looking directly ahead of yourself. So you're not focused on one particular point. It's almost like you're looking ahead, you can take in the entire space around you. So you can take in your peripheral vision, you can see either side of you, you can see above, and you can see below. So it's a very sort of soft focus that takes in the entire space in front of you. And just maintaining that focus, I'd like you to take a couple of deep breaths, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. As you breathe in, you're just focusing on the feeling of the lungs, taking in fresh air. And as you breathe out, just noticing how the body sort of softens a little bit as you exhale. Just one more time, breathing in through the nose. And as you breathe out through the mouth this time, just gently closing the eyes. Okay. So in closing the eyes, we immediately become more aware of the other senses. So I want you to start by just noticing the feeling, the contact between the body and the chair beneath you. Just feeling the weight of the body pressing down. Just feeling the contact, the weight of the feet on the floor. And of the hands and the arms just resting on the legs. I'd also like you to notice any sounds. So very often we kind of think of sounds as something that are going to get in the way of a quiet mind. I'd like you to use the sounds. So just take a moment, a few seconds, just to notice all the different sounds around you. Don't worry if there's lots of thoughts in the mind, that's perfectly normal. And we'll build those into the meditation as we go. Right now, just bring the attention back to the body. So just noticing how the body feels this evening, whether there's a sense of heaviness or lightness in the body, sense of stillness or restlessness. And then starting at the top of the head, just mentally, just scanning down through the body. Just noticing if there are any areas that feel particularly tense, tight, any areas that feel particularly relaxed. Just take 10, 20 seconds just to scan down through the body. Again, don't worry if thoughts come and distract you. Each time just coming back to the body as you scan down. So as you scan down through the body, some of you may have already noticed feeling of the breath, a rising and falling sensation. So some people feel this in their stomach, for others it's in the chest, for some people the shoulders. If you can't feel any movement in the body, just gently place your hand on your stomach so you can feel that movement of the breath. So not breathing in any special way, but just following the natural rhythm of the breath. And as you do that, just starting to notice, are the breaths fast, are they slow? Are the breaths deep, or are they shallow? And just to help you maintain your focus on the breath, just like to count the breaths as they pass now. So just silently to yourself. As you feel the rising sensation, you count 1. Falling sensation 2. Then 3, then 4, just up to a count of 10. When you get to 10, you stop and start again at 1. So just try that on your own. If at any point you get distracted, the moment you realize you're distracted, just letting go of the thought and just coming back to the breath again. Remember, we're not trying to stop thoughts, allow thoughts to come and go, but the moment you realize you've been distracted by those thoughts, just letting the thoughts go, coming back to the breath, and just continuing to follow that natural rhythm. Very gentle focus on the breath. And then just for a moment, I'd like you to let go of that focus, let go of any distraction. And just for 10 seconds or so, just let your mind do whatever it wants to do. So if the mind's been wanting to think, just let the mind think now. So nothing to do at all. And then just gently bringing the attention back to the body. Just coming back to that feeling of weight, the body pressing down against the seat, feet on the floor, hands on the legs. So becoming more aware of your environment again, any sounds. And then when you feel ready, just gently opening the eyes again. And if when the lights go on, if we could just have sort of 25% rather than straight to 100%, that would be great. Thank you. Oh, that's straight to 100%. So, sorry? It does feel good? Yeah, great, I'm happy to be here. I think I have a couple of questions for you, if that's okay, before we do questions the other way around. Is that okay? Just like two minutes. I do think there's something really interesting, and I just want to reassure, I hope most of you found it kind of pleasant and useful. But just to reassure those of you that may have felt really kind of restless, or this is a skill. It's like any other skill. You kind of have to practice it. If you sat down at a piano and after 5 minutes on the piano, it's like, no, this isn't really working. It doesn't play the tunes in my head. Well, yeah, you kind of have to keep going back and practicing. The same applies to meditation, to mindfulness, you know, so we have to keep coming back and practicing. So, and it's so different in a world where we are stimulated all of the time, where we are constantly kind of doing stuff. The first time, for a lot of people when they do this, it feels really alien, it feels really weird. It's like, what am I supposed to do? Well, that's kind of the point. There's nothing to do. But it takes the mind a little while to get comfortable with that idea. So we made that quite kind of short today. But we bought you some codes so that you can get free access to the app. You can go away, you can have a go at this exercise and some of the other ones as well. We'll give those out at the end. But just one quick question. So how many of you feel different now, better or worse, than you did 5-10 minutes ago? Okay, so kind of most of you, and hopefully not too many of you feel worse. Okay, again, just to reassure, sometimes people say, oh, I feel really tired now. This meditation stuff makes me feel really tired. To be clear, meditation will never make you feel a certain way. It won't make you feel tired, but you may, in becoming more aware of your mind, you may realize just how tired you are. It will never make you sad, but you might realize, oh, actually, I didn't realize I felt sad or anxious. Or you might realize, I never knew how happy I was. So there's lots of different kind of outcomes, and it changes all the time, and it's just a continuous kind of journey. But I'd love you to just try that journey, you know, and see how it works for you. So thank you for being game and joining in. Thank you. No, Will. Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. Along with meditation becoming mainstream, sleep is also very much becoming a thing where people realize that it's very important. It's important the amount of sleep that you're getting. And so I'm wondering, how do Buddhist monks feel about sleeping 3 to 4 hours a day, and how that affects their meditation and their falling asleep while meditating?
Yeah.
If there is any.
Yeah, there's some falling asleep during meditation. Look, I think first thing to say, everyone's different, you know. So just in life, if you look around, some people have like a lot of energy, and you look at them and it's like, how do you do all those things in a day, you know? And other people kind of a bit more kind of lethargic. And the same in the monastery. I used to look around the room, and some people would be falling asleep continually, and others seem to kind of be sat there quite okay. I think the mind is working very differently in the monastery. So we're not bombarded by, you know, all the stuff we're taking from the phones and from adverts and all the other kind of things that ordinarily are going on in our life. So the mind doesn't get as tired. So it just doesn't need as much sleep. That said, after a year or so of like 4 hours a night, they call it retreat tiredness in the monastery. You're a little tired, you'd kind of like to lie in, but at the same time, you're kind of fine. You're okay to operate and to meditate effectively. It doesn't really influence the meditation too much. In fact, sometimes even being like a little bit tired, it kind of just brings our level of effort down a little bit and can be quite quite relaxing, maybe even useful.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Hi, thanks for coming. That was awesome that
Pleasure.
we did that. So most people, when they try meditation for the first time, they, like you mentioned, they do it for a certain amount of time and they drop it off.
Yeah.
When you went to the Himalayas and became a monk, what made you continue through for 5-10 years?
Yeah.
And also, second part of that question is, how do I know that I need meditation?
Okay, let's do it the other way around. So I would just say, not just to yourself, but to everyone here, if there are times in your life where you sometimes feel stressed and you don't know how to let go of that stress, or if you sometimes struggle to go to sleep, or if you sometimes experience anxiety or sadness, or are overwhelmed by emotions or a busy mind, then you could probably benefit from meditation. I would recommend, as I say, trying it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Try it for yourself and see kind of how it feels. In terms of the other bit, in order to go off and become a monk, I think you've got to be in a particular state of mind. A state of mind which is fairly kind of, okay, I'm going to do this. You know, because it meant kind of leaving university and family and all those things. So I think I went through a whole range of different things. I went there thinking that nirvana was waiting for me. It was quite a rude wake-up call when I was in the monastery and realized that, oh, wow, this is actually really hard. And there's no distractions, there's no way of getting away from the mind, you know. I think over time, kind of, so to begin with, there's a bit of resistance towards it, you know. And maybe even like I needed a little bit of pride to kind of, my pride wouldn't let me leave, you know, which was kind of a good thing in a way, because once you get kind of through that, then the mind starts to kind of settle down a little bit and you feel kind of a bit more at ease with it. And then the motivation changes. I think most people go away to do that kind of thing because they're looking for peace of mind for themselves. And I was definitely like that too. And then as you train as a monk or a nun, you're kind of encouraged to think about it, not so much what it can do for you as an individual, but how it kind of impacts others and how it impacts the wider world. So then the motivation changes. So you're not staying there because you have to stay there because you're trying to achieve something. Instead, it's like, okay, this is a really positive thing to do for the wider world. And so then it becomes just a really joyful kind of thing to do instead. Yeah.
Hi guys, thank you so much for coming in. I was wondering, with the increasing amount of meditation apps coming out, how do you guys keep up with the competition and remain the leaders in the field?
Yeah. Go on, Richie.
It's over 3,000 apps in the App Store to do with relaxation, meditation, like whatever you want to call it. So it's a pretty crowded space. I think there's a lot of relaxation apps out there that kind of can show you waterfalls or sounds, and then maybe give you a brief respite. You know, it will relax you. I think because of the training that Andy's had, I think we try and put out a system of learning that is really kind of skill-based and gradual, and you feel like you're actually learning something that you can take away for yourself and apply to your life in a really skillful way, which I think is different to a lot of the kind of products that are out there. I think because we were so early on, you know, we were the first meditation app, we were the first subscription. You know, back in 2012. You keep playing on phones everywhere. I just hear like God coming down. So I think we had a really good head start.
That wasn't me.
We had a really good head start, which has kind of helped. And I think with the brand, the way that it looks, I think the way that people talk about it, you know, the fact that Headspace made it onto Fallon the other day and Andy was on Ellen, and I think those things they really help kind of keep you out in front. So I think the brand coupled with the product experience and the content keep us in front. But we don't pay too much attention, to be honest, to the competition. We kind of keep an eye on it, but we don't kind of obsess about it.
Hey, thank you so much for coming, and I also want to say thank you for doing the work that you're doing. I think it's really important. I've been meditating for about 4 years, and I kind of went from your aspirin type category to only recently in the vitamin type, and I found that's really where the benefits start. And I'm wondering what your strategy is to help convert more of those aspirin type users to become full vitamin users.
Yeah, it's a continual kind of question in our product kind of meetings, how we do that. I think there are a number of different ways. I think part of it is driven inside the app, and part of it is outside of the app. I think outside of the app, and even outside of what we're doing, there is just an increasing sense of permission within society. So meditation is getting talked about a lot more. People are feeling more comfortable kind of taking it up and doing it. So that kind of stuff helps. But then inside the app, I think it's looking at or being a bit more realistic. So when I came back from the monastery, the idea of doing less than an hour was kind of inconceivable. I didn't know it worked like less than an hour, So, and then I remember doing my first clinic session, and the people were only coming for an hour, and I thought, well, this is going to be really awkward because they're going to pay some money, and we're going to sit in silence. And how's this going to work? And so started kind of experimenting, and I moved to half an hour, and then to 15 minutes, and to 10 minutes. And then trying to find kind of like what's the sweet spot that kind of it feels like it has a meaningful benefit, but at the same time it's kind of not too long for people. And I think what we're discovering in the app is that, again, there's different ways of kind of engaging, and for some people it might be actually coming along and doing 2, 3, 4 minutes a day. Like that might be for that person, that I still consider that preventative. If they're coming along every day and not simply using it as an antidote, but there's that idea of intention, is such an important thing in meditation. Just turning up each day doesn't kind of really matter kind of what happens or what's going on in your life. Just turning up each day, and I worry less over time as to how long that's for, whether someone turns up for 3 minutes or for 5 minutes. I don't know, do you want to?
Yeah, I think it's also being really realistic that for most people, sitting with themselves every single day is really, really difficult. And so I think there's just been a bit of an acceptance on our part that not everyone's going to do that or want to do that. So we're actually just thinking about different types of content as well that aren't just meditation, that we can start to surround the experience with, that can help someone either motivate them to get to that point, or actually we think that if you can start to change people's perspective about the way they think about their life and the way they think about health and happiness in its kind of broadest sense, then actually that's a really valuable thing. And at the moment we've just got the kind of the pure meditation piece in there. But as we start to release this new product, you'll start to see lots of different types of content that can hopefully engage lots of different types of users.
Questions?
Hi there, thank you so much for coming to our class and speaking with us. In the introduction video, it mentioned how when someone pays for a subscription, then Headspace goes ahead and matches that subscription for someone in need. And the app itself is already, helping to improve people's lives. So I was just wondering why you guys decided to add that aspect to it to make it so much better, and sort of how it works and what role it plays in the business.
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, we started off as a non-profit actually when we first started, and we just got laughed at, is the truth. I'd hate to, like, in the UK, it's not a particularly well received thing. I think it's very different in America actually, but in the UK, when you say, oh, we're a non-profit and we're a meditation, he used to be a monk and I used to be people just used to laugh at us and go, yeah, see you later. So so we changed that, and actually when we started to charge for the service, people took it much more seriously, is the truth. And I think Andy and I always had a bit of a Robin Hood kind of approach, which was, if you can afford to pay for it, great, but if you can't afford to pay for it, which a lot of people can't, we wanted to make it available. So we're doing, we're working with about over 400 different non-profits and NGOs. We work with Oxfam. We've given hundreds and hundreds of thousands of subscriptions away for free. We just hit over 5 million minutes with the non-profit partners recently of meditation use. So it's, and I don't know if you want to talk about anything else, but
no, I think this is primarily, like, first and foremost, it's a socially, it's a social mission for us. And in order to deliver on the mission and the vision, it has to be commercially successful. But that doesn't mean that the social mission can't come first and foremost and can't be incorporated and integrated into every single part of what we do. And it's a really important thing for all of us. I think when you look at some of the, Rich mentioned Oxfam, it's Red Cross, MSF. Like these are NGOs in war zones, they're rape crisis centres, they're addiction centres. It's so kind of broad, and when we get those emails and things kind of coming back from those places, it's such an important part of why we all turn up to work every day. We can't think of a good reason not to do it.
Hi there, thank you so much for coming. So you guys do a lot of work promoting mindfulness and meditation, specifically through people's phones and tablets, which tends to be an area where people actually tend to get distracted and taken out of the moment. So has that been a challenge for you guys? And if so, how have you dealt with it?
It's not been so much of a challenge, actually. In fact, it's what's enabled us to do what we've done. I think both of us, I think we both really enjoy kind of healthy tension. Like there's really it's interesting, that paradox, The phone and the tablet is not the problem, first and foremost, just to be absolutely clear. The phone is a piece of plastic, glass and metal. It's an inanimate object. It doesn't bother you, I promise you. Like your relationship with it, that's something else. That's between you and your phone. But the phone itself is just, so as Rich mentioned earlier, I think there's something far more interesting kind of thing. Rather than kind of saying that, phones or tablets, there's an issue with them. It's kind of, okay, as entrepreneurs, like how can we find a way to use those in a positive way? And the truth is everyone is on their phone, and we wanted to meet people where they were rather than trying. It's hard enough, trust me, it's hard enough getting people engaged in meditation as it is. Never mind trying to pull them away from their phones as well. So to serve up meditation on their phones, that seemed for us like a really obvious kind of way to go.
Thank you again for being here. This question is more for Andy. I was wondering how the transition went from after your time of being a monk and leaving everything and then coming back to, I guess, like the real world and back to the other type of reality that's filled with the material life and everything, how you kind of dealt with that.
Yeah, I was thinking of that as I sat in my Lamborghini the other day. No, I wasn't. No.
He doesn't have a Lamborghini. Just to be clear, he doesn't have a Lamborghini.
No, I think it was eased for me a little bit. Like I said, I was sent from the monastery to Moscow in Russia to teach meditation so I was living as a monk. Towards the end of my time as a monk, I was living as a monk but in a city, which was really kind of interesting, because you're trying to kind of live the vows and the rules of kind of a monastery but living in a city. But what it did, the challenges aside, and I mean, anyone from Russia here? Anyone from, no? Yeah. Очень приятно. There were some challenges, some very real challenges, and I didn't find people were always particularly receptive to a bold guy in a skirt walking down the street. Those things aside, it enabled me to be part of everyday life, but living as a monk, So I didn't like the idea of the local community, who were really kind of hard up at the time. It was like some time ago. So I actually started working in a local school during the day and teaching meditation in the evening at night. So I was going to work, but dressed as a monk, and I was earning some money to pay for the flat, and then I was going into the meditation center and teaching. So I feel like I had quite a nice transition. Probably the harder transition is coming out of retreat. So if you spend kind of a year or two like completely away from everything with no contact with the outside world, when you leave there, it's quite a shock, especially if you've been in silence kind of a lot. I was joking with some of the guys from work the other day. One of my teachers, he had a group of guys doing in Tibet. It's very common to do a 3-year. So it's a retreat, and you're completely locked away for the whole time for 3 years, 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days. And these guys had just come to the end of it, And this was in a Tibetan monastery in Scotland. And he went and picked them up from the retreat. And he said, I've got a treat for you. We're going to drive, rather than go back to the monastery, we're going to drive down into town. And he took them to see Jurassic Park. And we had these 15 guys who had been in complete seclusion for 3 years, walking into the cinema, like watching these massive dinosaurs, not really sure whether it was real or were they watching, like was it in their mind? And so, yeah, I think it can be a shock. That's quite an extreme version. But my own experience was that actually, you know, the mind is mind. And whether the mind is in the reality of a Himalayan monastery or it's here, mind goes with you wherever it is. It's not a different mind.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Just want to thank you once again for coming out here and talking to us. It's greatly appreciated. I have 2 quick questions. So the first one is, you know, as someone who listens to podcasts a lot, I know you guys sponsor a bunch of really great podcasts like Tim Ferriss's podcast himself. But I'm wondering, how come you guys haven't actually possibly looked into the arena of podcasts and maybe even starting a podcast for yourself and, you know, about meditation and maybe not even limiting it to meditation?
It's coming.
And then my second question is for Andy. So, so recently I listened to the other podcast, How I Built This, which is an absolutely amazing podcast, and I would recommend that you guys go on there because a lot of people would be intrigued by your journey. But I was listening to Manoj Bhargava, and he's the founder of 5 Hour Energy, and he had a very similar journey to Andy's. And you know, he dropped out of Princeton, went to India for 7 years to pretty much be a monk. When he came back, he said he was able to exercise a lot of simplicity and common sense in his life. So do you feel like you were able to go along that pathway as well?
Yeah, I think inevitably you can't live that life and not bring a degree of simplicity kind of back. I think that's one of the beautiful things about it, is that it just strips away all the clutter, whether it's internal clutter or external clutter. I found kind of in starting and growing a business, and in getting married and having children, I have less simplicity in my life than perhaps I did when I was a monk. But it's a very enjoyable complexity. I'm very fortunate, you know, in what I do. But I think bottom line, if you meditate on a regular basis, there is a freshness and a simplicity to whatever you're doing in life. Yeah.
Thanks for coming. My question is more geared toward like the value add, you know, aspect of your business. So I want to know if it's once you reach like a certain mastery. So does that stop? As a customer, do I just like stop learning if I master the meditation aspect? And so what is kind of the value there afterwards? Like, I mean, is there levels to it? And then from what it seems like, there's maybe like a beginner, intermediate, and then there's the advanced. And then once you get to advanced, you're kind of, you know, done pretty much. You're on your own afterwards. So does that, you know, customer engagement like continues on, or like does it end there and then you know, go on for new customers?
That's you.
No, you go.
Okay. So I mean, first and foremost, that there's not an enlightenment pack. It's not like you go up the levels and then it's like, oh, okay, I'm done now. My experience, I'm still learning. Absolutely, I get called all kinds of things. Some of them are nice, some probably not so nice. But you know, I consider myself a student of mindfulness, certainly not a mindfulness kind of expert, you know. And I figure if I'm still learning now, after 10 years of study away and probably, I don't know, 30 odd years of meditation, you know, then there is always, you know, it is a lifelong journey. It's the same as any other skill. I don't, you know, you look I'll use professional sports as an example. If you look around professional sports, you never hear of anybody, even at an elite, at an Olympic level, kind of saying, yeah, I'm done. Like, I've gone as far as I can go, or like, you know, there is always kind of more to learn, whether it's in art and music and sport or whatever it might be. And the same is true of meditation, and that's something we kind of try and bring into the app as well. Is we want to be kind of a companion. We want to be a guide for people throughout their life and a backstop no matter what's happening in their life at any time. It may be that they're not always a subscriber, and that's fine, but maybe it's that they come back to us kind of when difficult things do happen. But knowing that there is a friendly kind of guide or companion that can help them through difficult situations, as well as for those people interested in a more preventative approach or even kind of an existential kind of approach, that there's something kind of there. I think that's how we try to approach it.
There's also no community in the current product.
Yeah.
So, and I think as you start to see the product change, there will be a lot more of that, and I think that will become a, when we talk about the viral effect of the product, it's literally word of mouth. Like, there are no traditional viral loops in the product, there's no sharing mechanic in the product, there's no community in the product. So when we talk, it's grown like that. It's literally people going, have you tried Headspace? You should download it. So once we actually start to build those loops into it, I think the experience for a user will be pretty different. And I think that's what hopefully will keep you engaged and motivated and part of a group. Imagine if all of you guys could be in a group together. You knew at a certain time you could all meditate, check in. All of those kind of things, I think, can really help kind of make it feel like a different experience.
You talked about how in the early days with the feedback cards, data would inform and even change your content. And I'm curious how now and today, how data informs your content, because it seems like whenever I'm using the app and my mind starts to wander, you always tell me to bring it right back. So.
Yeah. I mean, there's a practice kind of question there, but there's also a date. Do you want to take the data one?
I can take the data one. So, we built everything until about a year ago purely from instinct, is the truth. Everything was purely instinct, no data at all. We hired our head of product from Zynga and ex-Amazon, so we've got pretty good at data recently. And I think we always like to be data informed, but not purely data led. And I think there is different. I think certain companies make all decisions based on data. I think we definitely try and walk that line about what does the experience feel like. Like, we obsess about that. Like, that's the thing that we probably, as a team, we think about the most. And then it's how do you layer in data to kind of, I think as you get different people in the team where their brains work in different ways and they approach problems in different ways, you have to have different ways of putting that argument forward. So data is really important for parts of the org, not so important for others. And so it's always that blend of creative skills and engagement and feel with data. So we try and walk that line, but I don't think we've fully nailed it yet, would be my take. And
on the practice bit, as human beings, we're all remarkably alike. That the mind is naturally, but you'd be amazed, like the amount of people that come up and say, how do you know my mind's wandering at that moment? Clearly I don't, but I can have a pretty good guess. One more question.
So I saw a Facebook video of young kids in the UK talking about how they're incorporating meditation after playtime, and I thought it was the cutest thing. And they talked about how useful it was to them. I'm curious what you think the role of meditation could be in a young child's life as they're growing.
Nice.
Yeah, you can
sure.
take that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think look, I think it's invaluable. There's a quote, I don't know if you saw it, it was by the Dalai Lama, who kind of said that if every child kind of learnt meditation before the age of 8, that in a generation there would be no war. I think that's quite ambitious. It's quite a big kind of idea, but I do think there's something really interesting at the personal level. I think, again, giving children the tools and skills they need to grow up happy and healthy. Number one. I think secondly, it's thinking about kind of in terms of direct relationships. So growing up with a sense of respect and kindness to those people around them. So hopefully kind of less, bullying and less kind of that stuff going on as they're growing up. And then kind of I think about it as a kind of wider sort of community as well. There's no doubt that you know, I looked on the, Rich sent me a screenshot the other day in the morning. There were 90,000 Headspaces all meditating at the same time. And then in the middle of the morning, someone sent me another one. Again, it was 90,000. And again in the afternoon. And it was kind of like thinking like, wow, at any one time, that many people kind of sitting down, letting go of all their opinions and beliefs, the things that divide us, and actually being present in the world with a sense of positive intention. I think that's incredibly powerful. And if we give kids the skills they need to do that, then we're looking at generations, instead of kind of divisiveness, hopefully of sort of, yeah, slightly more harmonious instead.
And I think, just to add to that, our mission is how do we improve the health and happiness of the world. I don't think you can do that unless you can teach kids to do it.
Yeah.
And we had a brilliant story the other day, and I think this is that ripple effect thing, and it can come from anywhere, where a 10-year-old wrote in to say that they'd been using the product, and he was getting bullied at school, and he was using it to help him, and his mum noticed that he was using it, and then his dad noticed that he was using it, and someone else in his family noticed it. So from that kid, that 10-year-old that got recommended it from a teacher, it had spread through his family, all the adults in his family. So I think you never know when that seed can kind of... And I think to see it, like when Andy teaches it with children, it's amazing to see, because they don't have any of the hang-ups that we have. They just get it. You don't have to do the preamble. You just give them the exercise and they just do it. And they go, and you're like, how was that? And they're like, yeah, it feels really nice. It's kind of, they don't complicate it. So you think, and I think if all of you think about what it was like growing up as a teenager and thinking, I wish I didn't have to go through all that angst. Like, I wish I'd had something to kind of deal with some of that angst as a teenager. I know I would have loved it. So if you think that can become a core skill where you don't even think it's this extra thing that you're doing, it's just part of the way that you live, and you do that at scale, I mean, that's probably the most exciting thing that we could do, I think.
Yeah.
I wanted to add, can I ask you guys for like 1 extra minute or 2 extra minutes? That's probably should just take that and focus on that. But you guys started as friends first before you got into business. Is this on by any chance? Did you turn it on? And so you started as friends. You guys have been through a lot. And sometimes in business, people say, don't go into business with your family, don't go into business with your friends. And sort of connecting with Glenn's class about, like, and you referred to this, like it's not just likely to happen that we're going to encounter grief and loss and illness. It's a certainty. And so part of this is maybe it gives you a different perspective of that. And forgive me if this is too personal, but you know, a couple weeks after you moved to LA, you confronted a really harsh situation and health. So talk about what you guys have been through as friends and sort of how that gave you perspective on this.
Yeah, I mean, we've been through a lot, and it's a real bromance, you know. We genuinely, like, we've been through. I wouldn't do it without Rich, and I know he wouldn't do it. You know, we've talked about it a lot. He wouldn't do it without me. Like, we are first and foremost kind of friends. We hang out together, we surf together, we go on holiday together, and we work together. Like, you know, it's not just a
He's
working.
also best man at my wedding later in.
I am. Yeah, so I mean, it's I told you it's a bromance, right? It's so I, you know, yeah, it goes, and when we came to LA, as you said, I had cancer, and Richie, you know, when you're growing a company, like something like that can be really kind of disruptive and a bit inconvenient, and Richie really kind of stepped up to the plate. And I mean, he was flying. I had so many talks and things booked in around the world, and Rich was basically, he was just taking everything and flying around and kind of, you know, and I think it's really important that you know, kind of in a relationship like that you got each other's back, and it doesn't matter what happens, the other person is always there to support.
And I think it's, like, we've never actually had I know it sounds ridiculous and you won't believe it, but we've never had an argument. He did used to be a monk, to be fair, but
And you're both British.
Yeah, we're both British, and
That's
we're very
true.
polite, and
It's
we
all
hide
very
everything.
repressed. Yeah.
But I think we've always. It's interesting. We did a management offsite, and they did the Myers-Briggs, and we were like exactly the same, both idealists, both like we were like virtually the same, all the same. We picked out the same passages in this book that related most to us. So I think I think sometimes the team have found that difficult. When you have a couple of co-founders, it's like, do I go to mum? Do I go to dad?
Like you call me mum, right?
But no one's ever been able to get a different answer out of each of us, and that's actually that when you're really solid like that, and the team know it, and know that you're completely aligned. I think it has something kind of special to it, and so it's an unusual relationship, but one that it's been the best. It's been the best thing that's ever happened. So it's been great.
We've heard that from a few people when you sort of share one mind and you really sort of feel like you have the same values and the same mission and vision. It's been really a thrill to have you guys here. Thank you so much.
Thanks
Please
for
help
having
us
us.
out. Andy.
Thanks, guys.